first question. So, who is Cal Seciwa?
Hi, my name is Calbert Seciwa. I'm the oldest daughter of Cal Seciwa. His laughter, his jokes. Everybody used to call him Cal the pal or Uncle Cal, the kitty's pal.
But I knew what he was doing, and I respected him for what he did and for his goals.
Besides a friend, he's been a colleague. I worked with him here at Arizona State University. He's one of the best friends I've had in terms of always being there to support him and vice versa. Cal was really a sharp man.
He was a friend, first of all. He was also a colleague. He was a mentor. But he also, in many ways, was a co-conspirator.
I met Cal Seciwa in the early 1990s. At that time, he was the director of the American Indian Institute, which is known as AISSS today.
Cal Seciwa was a friend and a mentor for myself at ASU as I was able to come as a freshman at ASU back in 1990.
He made everybody laugh. He was your typical procrastinator, always on Indian time, always joking. I could always tell that something was wrong if he gave a fake smile. A majority of the time, he always smiled no matter what was bothering him. Cal was the son of Tony and Lucy Seciwa.
Cal grew up like I did here in Zuni reservations. Cal's was a baby brother. Next older brother was Calbert Seciwa, and I was next, and we have older sister, Reba. Grew up here and went to school here in Zuni. But this is where Cal was born, right here. Livestock, we have chicken, pigs, turkey, all kinds of things we would, do before we would do chores before we go to school. Feed the chickens, take care of things, but this is just remodeled. It's pretty nice. The time I was going to school here, they didn't have high school, so we moved to Gallup.
They lived in Gallup, New Mexico, where he attended grade school and high school.
First met him when he was in junior high, when I was in high school in Gallup, and after I started college at Fort Lewis in the mid 1970s, he was a student there, and at that time we became close friends. And
after high school, he moved on to Fort Lewis College in Durango, graduated with his bachelor's in 1975. I was born shortly after that time. We then moved back to Zuni, and he was accepted into the UNM Law School program. He finished that program, then went to be an intern in Washington, D.C. Throughout his educational time, he continued to travel back and forth to Zuni, to Gallup, where he had to abide to do his religious ceremonies and obligations.
He was a scholar. Even though we have a traditional upbringing like I never forget my tribe, and I follow the tradition to this day. I was a leader in trying to focus on the things that were able to help Native American. He did as executive director for the Indian tribe here in Zuni. Then, after his departure from the tribal work here, he went on to Arizona State University.
In 1988, my father accepted the position to become the first director of the American Indian Institute at ASU.
he really encouraged me to come here, and he's one of the primary reasons I accepted a faculty appointment in the School of Justice Studies.
He did not just direct, but he also put himself in the footsteps of a student, where in fact that he did the same thing at Fort Lewis College after leaving Gallup.
I was in the College of Business, but it gave me a chance to just bounce ideas off him since he was here already, and what can we do around more scholarship money or more opportunities for students that wasn't here already, and he was doing that work already.
He was very welcoming as a freshman. I remember he always had his arms open and welcomed students to the Institute.
So no, he was very helpful bringing the students onto the ASU itself, and person very helpful and courteous, and wanted to know how things were going, and it was was helpful in making that transition.
But, you know, he has this big baritone voice, and he was always glad to see you, and you know, and shook hands with him, and he'd ask me, what are you doing over there? Are you kicking ass and taking names? And I said, yep.
And at that time, the students didn't, walk around with personal laptops. So we had to go to campus to use the computer at the Institute, and the other option was to go get in line at the Computer Commons.
He's the one that laid the foundation, and I know some other people get credit, but he's the one that, saw that there was a need, helping out the Native American students, and he planned for it appropriately.
As the American Indian student population started growing and staying steady, my father also encouraged that we become more involved in the ASU community. Showing up at the homecoming parade, doing ASU powwow, and even starting the convocation of recognizing the graduate students from the Native American community.
Since Cal was from Zuni, he was able to collect his own eagle plumes, and graduation or the convocation was small enough that on his own time, with his own commitment, he would collect an eagle plume and give it to each of the graduates.
So the move happened from the MU to Nepal, and as you know, today the American Indian Convocation is held at the ASU Gamage Auditorium.
He then seen the leadership in all of the students, gave them tasks, and depended on each one of them to grow the circle as we see now.
I first got here, I wanted to create an American Indian Studies program because there wasn't any here. And Cal was the biggest supporter that I had at the time. So now, since 2000, about 2001 actually, we've been offering undergraduate degrees, and about 5 or 6 years ago we developed a master's program. And now we're thinking about changing American Indian Studies into a school of Indigenous Studies, and if Cal was still with us, he would be very supportive of our efforts, and would probably offer us some insights on how we should do things.
One of the biggest accomplishments that my father did was the development of Zuni Salt Lake Coalition.
Taking on a big company that tried to close down our salt lake here in New Mexico, and for that, it's a major accomplishment that I'm really proud of, and he did it.
So that was one project I worked with him on here at Arizona State. Another that I think is probably the most important one that I think that he became engaged in terms of culture and religious freedom was his efforts to stop the Zuni Salt Lake destruction by a strip mine being proposed by SRP.
The coalition was to stop SRP from going underneath Mother Salt Lake and taking her coal. Mother Salt Lake was created as a gift to us. Her salt from the earth is a blessing that we use in prayer, not just for Zunis, but for Hopi, Navajo, and all our surrounding pueblos.
Actually, I went out there as an economic development analyst, and then ended up in the president's office working on intergovernmental affairs and public policies. He was doing work on Zuni Lake. It was somewhat in kind of the same work that I was doing for Salt River Tribe. It did give me a chance to kind of understand how he was doing it for his community, and in many ways it gave me a chance to work with Salt River in terms of letter support and their effort to protect this.
All the other indigenous tribes around the world fasted with us, they prayed with us, they ran with us, and they even petitioned with us. And that victory was won. No longer will Salt River Project be able to attack Mother Salt Lake ever again. He did not just direct, but he also put himself in the footsteps of a student. He did the same thing at Fort Lewis College after leaving Gallup. He was often homesick. That also played in mind when he spoke with a student. He also encouraged the students. At that time, there was only a few, but encouraged each one of them to stay, whether it was a homesickness that was getting to them or the culture shock of being at a large university. Being that he noticed that a lot of them really wanted to go home over the holiday break, and to some of them it was impossible, therefore creating the Feast and Fest.
I think I was a student, and I don't remember the exact year, but I'm sure I was a student. But it was always nice to have a home-cooked meal. That was the big highlights, to go gather with, the native community and to have a home-cooked meal rather than the campus dining food.
I need to thank his family for maintaining his memory and continuing his legacy of the Feast and Fest. This is, again, something that they came up with that was very, basic about making sure that students had enough food to eat.
And my mom and my grandmother also helped in the first one. We ended up cooking about 4 turkeys in the oven, scrambling whatever supplies we could get, and having our first Feast and Fest in the anthropology building. We invited students and staff.
And in many ways, we've grown so large that it's more difficult for us to maintain that community. We actually have more faculty on campus, but it's harder for us to get them all together at one time. When back then, it was like a family. And that would be the one thing that, in my own role as the Assistant Vice President of Tribal Relations for ASU, is to rebuild that we maintain that family relationship with each other, especially with our new faculty and our larger number of students. It's harder to do that, to simply have a potluck and invite everybody. But why not? That's what Cal did.
Probably the same thing again, and just appreciate him looking to see where ASU was with the challenge they had in regard for funding, space, resources wise, and looking at, as I said, he saw 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and planning to get the appropriate resources now, and now the ASU students now get the fruits of the benefit of that, of having the new building up there with necessary tutors and computers and resources and the support they need to graduate.
I'm sure he's really proud and looking down on us thinking, wow, thank you, Ejeje, for welcoming us to Arizona State University. Thank you for being our mentor. Thank you for supporting us. And thank you for always believing in us. Ejeje, Cal.
We can become the #1 university in innovation, but we should not forget, that we're all, one family, and that we should support one another. And that's Cal's legacy, and one that we should always maintain, because I think that had a lot to do with the success of the students that, have finished and are out there now, doing their own thing and supporting their own communities and raising their own families and contributing back.
Yeah, we've known each other over 50 years. And I'm also what you might consider an uncle to his children as well. So we're very close and continue to be, so his memory is always with me.
I can just see my father today, giving his last dollar, his last pass on the bus, or even a free meal card to students, so they won't have to worry about where their next meal is coming from or how are they going to get back home after class. His legacy lives on with each one of us. Some may have met him, others know of him. Nevertheless, we are following his example. We are demonstrating all of his talents, his leadership, his humbleism, and here we are today. Let us continue to lead by his examples and to never forget who we are and where we came from. Alakwa.